Hey, I'm Alex Southey, and you're listening to Your Worst Song. I'm just going to jump into it this time. I had drummer for the Swallows and Blue Rodeo, Glenn Milchem. He was incredibly forthcoming, talking about growing up in Oakville and then being part of the exciting sort of 80s Queen Street West scene, jumping into things with Blue Rodeo, and where that took him. We also talk a lot about side projects. We talk about how those different bands wrote songs, how his drumming played a part, and really just I tried to get a glimpse, I guess, of what it's like at the top, at the Canadian mountaintop, of bands. There's some good little touching stories about other major artists that are Canadian, like Gordon Lightfoot, Gord Downey, the guys in the Sadies. So look out for those and enjoy. Enjoy. Thought this was a satisfying talk. I'm Alex Southey, and you're listening to Your Worst Song.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good, thanks. I was
Good.
trying to find your name.
Oh, yeah.
You're
My name is
Alex? No.
Alex. Yep,
Oh,
yep.
hey, Alex.
Yeah, no worries. No.
At first, I thought I was looking like we have remarkably. I have like this exact same staircase as you. I thought I was looking at myself for a second. Like it's
That's funny.
actually like the same thing where it's like white staves
Oh, really?
and yeah, I'd move my. I got to show you.
Yeah, show me,
You
show
got to
me.
see this. This is crazy. Like it's
Wow, yeah, that is
isn't
pretty
that weird?
crazy. Wait, yeah. See, what I should have done is just pulled a prank, and then I would be in your house with the
And we're
stair with
both
the
wearing
stair.
green sweaters.
That's true. Yeah, exactly. We
Yeah,
have longish black hair. We're looking at different versions of each other.
this is
Yeah,
weird.
I love your sweater actually. It's
Oh,
very
thank you.
it looks very 90s to me. Like it looks like something Kurt Cobain would wear, and I mean that in a good way.
Yeah, well, it is a 90s sweater, and it's from my wife got it in Ecuador like 25 years ago. And then
Whoa.
she was like, cool sweater. And then she tried it on after she bought it. She was like, it's too itchy. And it sat in the bottom of her cupboard for like 25 years. And I literally never saw it till she was going to give it away to the Sally Ann or something. And I was like,
Right.
I'll take that. So.
Yeah, wow. Well, good call. I'm glad that you saved it. What was her were you with her in Ecuador or she was there before
No,
you met?
this was before we met.
Okay, gotcha. I was thinking, ooh, Ecuador. That's an interesting story to start with. But
I think, yeah, she was traveling with a boyfriend who I think was Ecuadorian and maybe making a film of some sort because she's a cinematographer.
oh yeah, wow, very cool. So well anyway, thanks a lot for joining me. I really appreciate it. What were you up to today so far?
Today, well, I played last night at Grossman's with
Hmm.
Action Sound Band, which we had an amazing time. I love playing with those guys. It's a super fun gig. And every Wednesday at Grossman's.
There
And
you go. Yeah, actually, sure. Why don't we start with that? Tell me about your relationship with Grossman's and how long have you been doing the weekly shows?
um, Well, I've been doing it. I think it's about 6 years now. I've been playing with those guys. It started out with the bass player, the original bass player, Leo Valvasori, who's a fantastic bass player and human being, and who was with Alana Miles for a lot of years. Used to play with
Hmm.
Ronnie Hawkins, Martha and the Muffins, a bunch of people. And he asked me to come along and play. They already had Gary Craig, who's a great Toronto drummer,
Hmm.
uh, one of my favorite Toronto drummers. And but he can't always do it. So I've been doing it with them. I sort of still share the gig with Gary, and I've been doing it for 6 years now. And it's like essentially like a blues band. But just a really funky, cool blues band with Eric Shankman on guitar, who's a guitarist
Hmm.
from the Spin Doctors.
Well, very
And
cool.
Leo moved out west, so now it's Stan Mychek on bass, who is played with Sass Jordan for many years and was in the last iteration of the Guess Who before
Oh yeah.
Burton Cummings shut it down. But Yeah. So anyway, it's been great playing with those guys. It's like my first sort of legit blues band I played in, so it's been a real education in the blues and playing shuffles and stuff like that. And it's very spontaneous,
Right.
and they're great musicians, so I love doing it. So what I did, so this morning I had to get up. My wife is away right now, so I had to get up with the kids at 7:30. I went to bed about 4. I got up at
Mm.
7:30 to get the kids off to school, and now I'm and just drinking a lot of coffee and getting ready to talk to you.
Okay, well, we've got that last part in common. I am downing coffee. Just take me briefly back to last night. What leads you to be out till 4? Or just maybe you weren't out till 4, maybe you were just
No, I wasn't out till
up
4.
till 4. I get
I,
that
I was
because
out till yeah, I was
you
out
have
till
that adrenaline post show, right? That's
yeah.
classic.
Yeah, I was out till 2:30 probably. But then, yeah, I kind of like to sit around and think about music and stuff. I don't know until I'm tired after a show. So yeah, I usually yeah, if it usually takes me an hour and a half or so before I can be ready to go to sleep.
Are you thinking about music? I'm genuinely interested in that. When you say you like to just sit, I guess what you mean is sort of debrief on what the night's music was. Is that kind of what you mean? Or do you mean
Well,
truly your mind is free flowing and you're just like more generally thinking about music?
there's some free-flowing mind stuff going on. Also, listening to music, I'll just listen to music on my earbuds or whatever. Like last night, I was listening to Junior Wells.
I don't know Junior Wells.
Junior Wells is a great blues singer, harp player,
Mm.
who's got a start, I think, in the 50s, and he played with Buddy Guy for many years, and his records are incredible. And he's just like this incredibly soulful singer and harp player who's just sort of his music is incredibly joyous.
Oh.
And I just as actually I didn't get to know Junior Wells through Action Sound Band. My oldest friend Josh, who's a mortgage broker,
Hmm.
just like texted me one day and he was like, "You got to listen to this record," and it was Hoodoo Man Blues by Junior Wells, which is a record everybody should have in their life.
Yeah, check that out, listeners. I am curious why it took you so long, in your own words, to get to playing in a like legit blues band. If that was it a
Um,
latent interest?
no, I grew up listening to the blues because my dad is a great lover of jazz and blues. So I grew up listening to the blues, but just nobody asked me, you know?
Okay. And you didn't feel passionate enough to go, I'll start that myself as a drummer.
I know I never thought like, yeah, I
Okay.
know. I felt like, yeah, as a white guy from Oakville, I got to start it. That's my calling.
Yeah, I think
Never
that's the
felt like
cradle of jazz and blues, right? Was Oakville?
the Mississauga Delta.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. So, but you're finding it, I guess, or you found it clearly very um, worthwhile and like a worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah, it's fantastic because it's like I say, it's been an education. I've learned about so many blues artists. It's been great for my drumming because uh, the blues is a deceptively simple form, but just rhythmically, never mind tonally, it's a whole universe tonally as well, even though it's sort of, based on it's the pentatonic scale and it's
Hmm.
like 12 bar blues. It's like they're, really simple forms, but like rhythmically, when you say talking about a shuffle, which is like a rhythm, like that's
Yeah,
a shuffle rhythm. But there's so many gradations of a shuffle. You can you can make it more like closer to 16th notes as
yeah, I
opposed
see.
to just triplets, a one, a two, a three, and a four, and a one. So and just things like that. And it's like a science when you're playing a song, deciding what the right feel is and what you're going to emphasize and it's when you have a weekly residence, you don't rehearse, you just do it on stage
Right.
and which is like worth 10 rehearsals and 10 practice sessions because you just have to be absolutely in the moment and be sort of attuned to
Yeah.
what everybody else is doing and what's going on. So it's just like a beautiful education and it's great for my playing.
That seems like it, and that sort of actually was good. That leads me to my next question, which was going to be how do you keep things fresh after so long in a weekly position? It sounds like it's partially that. It serves as almost a live rehearsal, sharpening of your skills. That's also a performance. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't do every week because I do
No,
share.
yeah, you share it, right? Yeah.
So like there's though it comes back quickly, but we sort of lately we've been kind of alternating months. Um but yeah, because like there's every now and then someone might say, don't do that. Generally there's not much direction. There's a lot of freedom and there's a lot of improvisation.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of opportunities to sort of go like, oh, maybe I could throw in this little thing I've been working on. Or you might actually discover something new just while you're figuring out how to play a song,
Hmm.
and so it's that's what keeps it fresh. And I gotta say, like we're talking about Action Sound Band, and but one of the great things about Blue Rodeo as
Hmm.
being a band that's been around like for 40 years, and one of the reasons that that band has endured, there's a lot of reasons, but that it doesn't get stale is because they're not a note for note kind of band. Like we're not that kind of band. It's like you can play it a little differently every night,
Yeah,
and
good.
yeah,
I
and
find
that's
that's more rewarding for the musician and for the audience. Like,
yeah.
especially like and I'm not saying only play B-sides or only play the really, really the stuff nobody shouts out. Like it can be a real give and take between the audience and the artist and still be satisfying for both of them if there's that room. I don't even like going to shows. And if I hear the band, like I think it's technically impressive, I guess, if they pull it off exactly like the record. But at that point,
Yeah.
it's like, go listen to the record. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's
I,
cool that that's something that Blue Rodeo does as well as Action Sound Band.
yeah, and I guess, most of the bands I play in are like that, which I'm fortunate because, a lot of younger musicians, if you're playing in touring bands, you're generally going to be playing to tracks, you're going to be playing to a click. Um, you're all going to be spread out if you're playing larger venues, or you're going to be all spread out and on in-ears. Like for me, it's fascinating to listen to say like a new country band doing a sound check because all you when they're getting their stage sound together and the PA isn't on, all you hear is drums. Everything else
Mm.
is there's no amplifiers. Everything else is on in-ears, and you don't hear the whole thing till they bring the PA up. But Rodeo's an old school band in that like we don't use clicks or tracks, and we never will. And that's like when you talk about say when you're saying, oh, I'm not saying, play B-sides and stuff. It's like we do try to mix up our repertoire, but we are obliged to play. There's probably about 15 songs, you
Yeah.
know, 10 to 15 songs that like we gotta play every night.
Sure.
And how do you keep that fresh? And it's
Hmm.
how do you and the way you do it is you play it a little differently every night. And in some cases, like say a song like 5 Days in May, which we have played every single show since it was released, since it was recorded,
Yeah.
it's really different every night because there's all these extended jams in it. And so it's that's what keeps it fun and fresh. And I think for the audience too, because there's fewer and fewer bands that are doing that, it seems.
It does seem like that. Definitely. I'm curious if you ever go so far changing a song, you don't just improvise, you don't just set a jam session or section or something like that, which sort of we can all understand how that might be packaged inside of a live song. Like it gives you
Right.
it's a free it's a white canvas in between, tent poles or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if you ever change songs to the point that you change the time signature, you change its DNA to an extent.
I that would only be something we would do collectively. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't say like organically I suddenly started playing in five middle of bad timing and it was awesome. I
No,
get
no, I do
I
mean more as
get
a band.
tired.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but no, as a band, Greg in particular is fond of reapproaching songs, and so there's been in his case, there's been a few songs. I can think of a few examples
Hmm.
where they were written one way, and then they morphed into something completely differently. A really good example of that would be Disappear.
Hmm.
We first recorded for Nowhere to Hear, and it didn't make it on the record. And the first iteration of Disappear sounded a bit like U2. It had this kind of U2-ish kind of landscape,
Mm.
like With or Without You or something.
Yes, yeah.
Uh, I don't know where that version is. It might still be floating. It might be sitting in some storage space somewhere. But and then we did it again for Tremolo. But then Greg wanted to do like a country rock version of it. So
Hmm.
that's the I think that's the version. I can't even remember how that sounds because I'll have to listen to that record again. But it was like a sort of a country rock version, and that's the version that appeared on Tremolo. And then about, I don't know, 15 years later, I think he did it. I think it was might have been 2016 or like around then around when Jimmy Boskill joined, or maybe just before that, he decided to rearrange it again to be this like sort of widescreen epic arena rock piece.
Hmm.
And that's what it is now. And it's like, so it's like a 10-minute song now. It started out as like a 3.5, 4 minute
Mm.
song. And now it's like this 10-minute, like 8 or 9 minute epic that's in our set every night, and it has this very dramatic arc to it. And yeah, so that's an example. And each time the feel changed completely,
Hmm.
you know like the whole vibe of the song changed completely. Another one he did that with was oh, Moon and Tree was another one,
Mm. Mm. Okay.
which started out as like a kind of epic halftime rock ballad, and then that turned into a country rock song. uh and then we brought it back when we did the a couple of years ago, when we did the like a couple of shows that were sort of where we decided to just play like songs that we rarely play.
Uh-huh.
We went back to the original version of Moon and Tree, played it like twice. But yeah, that's
Huh.
Greg has done that a few times.
And I'm curious, I'm curious, thank you for those examples and maybe digging into whichever one you want. I'm just curious, you'll say that he says, "Oh, let's try it as a country rock song." I want to
Mhm.
know even more specifically what that conversation looks like. So, are you all meet this is in a rehearsal space or something and you're all sort of already talking about how
um,
that'll happen, or is it maybe he just,
he just
just
there's something he thinks about. He's tinkering with the song at home, maybe,
Mhm.
thinking about the song, and just shows up. It's either at a rehearsal, which is rare for us, but
Okay.
except maybe we might do a couple of rehearsals before a tour, where like production rehearsals where we rent a sound stage, and so the sound and light guys can get the
Yeah.
P lights together, and so it might come up then, but more likely it would be a sound check.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
And you guys are able to just do that on the fly in that way.
Yeah,
Huh.
usually. Yeah, usually. It depends on if it's not too complicated. Some songs, um, oh, here's another example of a song that he
Sure.
recently was a song called Venus,
Hmm.
which is on All the Things We Left Behind. And on that's about a 10-minute jam song. And we brought that back, and but it was more condensed, and the tempo was quicker. So and we just kind of rearranged the structure of it, because it's just like a long, slow Neil Young jam
Hmm.
on
Hmm.
the album. And we tried that a bunch of times in sound check, and we tried it a couple of times live, but just couldn't quite get through it. So
Oh.
time like something would screw up, and it just hasn't we haven't abandoned it totally. I think
Yeah.
maybe he has abandoned it. He has a really hard time remembering the lyrics. So it's possible he's been okay, no, I just can't get that one in my head. So
Yeah.
not all of them make it.
Huh. Well,
Um,
I kind of want to go all the way back to maybe not when you first got introduced to drums and started playing, but maybe let's go back to when you first started playing, let's call it professionally.
hmm.
Uh, Even if that's in your late teens or early 20s, just when you're playing venues where people actually have to pay tickets, buy tickets.
Mhm.
What
Yeah, I
was
guess.
that? I know that you cut your teeth essentially on the Queen Street West Toronto kind of scene. Is there
Yeah.
anything significant before that?
Well, like I said, mentioned earlier, I grew up in Oakville,
Yeah.
and I did when I was, I think, 18. I joined a cover band in Oakville called Boing Boing Boing, and they just played kind of 60s. It was just a fun, kind of silly band, and they did a lot of 60s covers and things. And we would play like, there was a White Oaks Tavern and Pizzeria in Oakville.
Hmm.
And some other venues like that. I think the biggest gig we ever did was the, was it called the John at McMaster
Oh.
University? I think the room might have been called the John or something. But um, yeah, so that was the first kind of real band I was in. That was very exciting for me. And, it was like, oh, yeah, because I was determined to somehow become a professional musician. But obviously, you know, being in a cover band in Oakville had sort of a limited future. So, yeah, I actually put an ad in Now magazine to wanting to start a band.
Wow.
Um, but because I just didn't know any
Yeah.
musicians,
Yeah, yeah.
really, and in Toronto, and and instead, a band called Zero Four reached out to me. They were like kind of a remnant of the late '70s Toronto punk scene. It had members of The Ugly in it,
Hmm.
and this woman named Zero. Her real name is Lynn, who is the singer, who's actually on one of the women on the cover of The Last Pogo, which was like a record, a sort of famous record of the last punk show at the Horseshoe in like
Oh,
1978. Anyway, so I was like with these like I got in this band with like these older punks,
yeah.
like I remember the bass player was Tony B and he was 36 and I was 18 and I couldn't believe how old he was, like I couldn't believe how old these people were. Um, but it was a gig, and so I started playing with them, and then somebody saw me playing with them and hooked me up and said, "Oh, I know this band that needs a drummer," and that band was called Vital Signs.
Hmm.
And they were, at the time, they told me we are the second coolest band on Queen Street next to the Rent Boys Inc., Rent Boys Incorporated. So I started playing with them, and that kind of introduced me to the whole Queen Street scene. And that was 1983. And then from there, I just started playing in as many bands as I could because I was just determined to try and make a living as a drummer, as unrealistic as that was. But I could eke by, just playing at local gigs,
Yeah, I do want to
So,
ask more about that. Like, as you launch yourself into that and seek any way possible to make it, to have drums be your job, and that even if it means eking by, it's still
mm,
just from drums. I want to know your mindset as you jump into that. Are you thinking, "Oh my God, I know it. I've seen it happen because I know there are famous drummers and drummers getting paid enough to live, but it still seems like an actual pipe dream?" Or as soon as you launch yourself into Toronto, are you thinking, "Well, yeah, I'm like a tiny, tiny, tiny fish in a barrel, but this is the barrel to be in and it's possible."
well, I did have a lot of self-belief in those days to the
Hmm.
point of arrogance. I had
I think
youthful.
you need that. You need like delusion to start yourself off, and then your talent
Yes.
catches up, your talent and your taste.
Yeah, I had my share of, arrogance and delusion. Was helpful. It also led to me getting dressed down and humbled more than once, which was also good.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and kind of essential. I kind of needed years of that
Sure, sure. It's funny.
to sort of, you know,
Bring you to
become.
earth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But so, and also the world that I kind of got into, like that Vital Signs world, which was kind of centered around the Beverly Tavern and the Rivoli,
Okay.
the Cameron.
Yeah.
It was it was a world of mostly amateur musicians, and a lot of self-taught musicians. And I just had a few years of drum lessons, but I had some chops, and I had um I don't know, like I also had a lot of confidence. So I sort of walked in there going, like, I know I can make myself known in this scene, and I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
some of
sometimes
the
you can back it up. Sometimes you really
yeah.
can back it up, right?
Well, you have to be able to back it up.
It
Like
doesn't mean you shouldn't be humbled, even if you can
yeah.
back it up. But yeah.
No, but it's like, yeah, I knew I wasn't. You can only go so far in bullshit, and
Yes.
there was a lot of that. But yeah, I knew that I knew what I was doing. So and I also just had like I used to play incredibly hard, like really like as loud and as hard as I could. And that was like, I remember seeing an interview with Dave Grohl when he was talking about when
Yeah.
he did, and it was just like, to make myself stand out, I just thought I'm gonna be the fucking loudest drummer that these people have ever heard. And then he's like, and then people would see me and go, "Oh my God, did you see that drummer?" And that was kind of my approach too. It was like
Oh.
going to they're going to remember me because they'll never have seen someone beat the crap out of a set of drums the way I am going to tonight. That was kind of my mindset every night. And I see like old videos of me and it's like, oh my God, like every hit is like starting from the arm, my arm is extended, like pointing up to the ceiling. I couldn't even physically do that anymore, which is a good thing. But yeah,
But where does that gusto come from?
um,
How do you develop? I know how you develop chops because it's through
yeah.
playing and practice, but how does that mindset come?
Um, well, a couple of things. I've always just had a lot of physical energy,
Okay.
period. And I still do, I'm glad to say. And also like there's my parents, my mother had a lot of blind self-belief. Like
Hmm.
it was like she believed in herself far more than was reasonable, really, or sensible, given her actual credentials. Like she was
Okay.
this, but that was just how she was, and I don't know if that's just like hereditary or something, because I would look at her and I'd be like, man, you gotta.
Where is this unearned confidence coming from?
Yeah, yeah, like
Yeah.
we should maybe balance this out with a little humility. But that wasn't her way. And my father was also like a quietly confident person. He was a very quiet person, and kind of self-effacing, but at the same time, kind of did well in life. Um, he just had this quiet confidence about him that I guess made people sort of trust him, which I don't.
Huh.
I wouldn't say I have a quiet confidence. Not like my mom. It's more, yeah. So I just feel like that it sort of came from them a bit. And also they
Huh.
were supportive. So that gave me a lot of self-belief. They never went, can you get a real job, please? Or, they were kind of like, yeah, you're good at this. You should do this. And
Wow.
yeah,
I think it's not necessarily necessarily rare to have supportive parents. I do think it's rare to have such supportive parents. They're like that, and they're not even like get a backup gig or anything like that. Like
yeah, yeah.
but also how young were you when you started making okay enough money that you really could even financially say to your parents like it's not even worth me getting another job. Like this is fine.
Um, I think when I started playing with Andrew Cash,
Hmm.
uh, who was had a record deal with Island. And so I started making, kind of a living wage with
Uh-huh.
him. Definitely sort of, you know, I became a father at 22 and I was living with my girlfriend and she had a child from a previous relationship. So we had two little kids and between the two of us, we kind of like scratched out a living
Right.
for a number of years. And then I got the gig with Andrew, which was brought some relative financial stability.
And
Uh,
what age were you around that point?
I think I was probably 20, 25, 24, 25 when I started playing with Andrew.
Wow.
In I think 4 years until I joined Rodeo when I was
Right.
28.
Wow. No, because I'm just trying to put myself in that. Well, not even myself. I'm just trying to think about um, if I was a parent of an aspiring musician, if by the time they were in their early 20s or mid 20s and they were already making a livable wage, then you really can't even, all you can do is, or should be doing is be supportive because they've already beaten out 90% of people who say they're going to be a musician. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, what was being, I presume, a highly sought after drummer like in that scene? And I say that partially because obviously it sounds like you were talented and made a name for yourself. And I also say that because drummers are the rarest and most sought after position in a rock band. I can still say because it's like, who don't you know that hasn't tried to pick up a guitar? They'll say, like, I guess I'll try and sing. Drummers seem to be the rarest, and therefore everyone's kind of pulling at them to be part of their band. That's how it seems now.
Right. Oh, well, okay. I mean, anybody who's good is the rarest, whatever the instrument is. But
Well, sure, yeah.
finding the right people. But in those days, okay, in terms of being a sought after drummer, I was sought after maybe in a small pool of bands because, once I did become to get known as a drummer, then I was kind of, I remember I started doing jingles a bit and stuff like that, which was not really my forte or my cup of tea because, well, first
Jingles.
jingles, yeah, which could be lucrative in those days in the
Yeah.
80s and 90s. And but you had to be a really good reader. And I was an okay reader. I was actually a
Mm.
better reader when I was a teenager and taking drum lessons than I was like in my, say, mid to late 20s when I kind of hadn't really done it for 10 years. But there was all kinds of great drummers around, like guys like Mike Slosky, Kevin McKenzie, Gary Craig, who I share a gig with
Hmm.
now, but was like those guys were doing a lot of sessions and doing a lot of jingle work and uh playing a lot of bands. So I wasn't quite in their league yet in terms of uh I don't know, versatility
Hmm.
and adaptability and that sort of thing. So I was kind of in a smaller sort of pool of musicians, but I was lucky to get in the Andrew thing and the Andrew Cash thing
Yeah.
because that broadened my horizons. That was before that it was I guess that was the first kind of roots type band I was in, or one of the first ones because of Blue Rodeo in the late 80s. There was a huge swing towards roots music in
Hmm.
Toronto. So, like in the wake of Blue Rodeo, suddenly everybody was wearing plaid and strumming acoustic guitar,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and so yeah, so I was all the bands I was in before, like bands like Vital Signs and I don't know other bands, Groovy Religion. They were I was in a band called the Garbage Men and
Hmm.
White, which was like a jazz funk band influenced by Ornette Coleman. So a lot of sort of funk influenced, new wave like post punk type stuff. And then suddenly I got to pivot. I got to like, oh, I got to listen to the band now and try to figure out what Lee Von Helm is
Yeah.
doing. And at first I was like, what is this hokey stuff? It took me a long time to sort of appreciate and get into that.
I completely understand because okay, I like the band now and really respect them as musicians, but occasionally I do still listen, and hokey is the word that I would apply to it. It is a little hokey, like,
Right.
but they're not trying to be that. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
appreciating that, I guess, and it only feels hokey now because of all the context that's happened in between them and now. You know what I mean?
Right. And I have to say for me, they sounded hokey then. They don't sound hokey to me now.
Right.
Being like a guy in his mid 20s who grew up listening to Gang of Four and Public
Yeah.
Image, and that was your idea of cool music. And
Yeah.
then suddenly it's like these guys are trying to sound like old timey. Like, what
Like they're
is that?
from the
You
Civil
know?
War or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And
yeah,
they're trying to look like what is that? Why does everybody like that? Like it took me a while to understand, I mean, the band is part of Blue Rodeo's DNA, right?
sure.
So, I had to learn to appreciate. And I had to, but then, I became grateful that I
Right,
had
exactly. It went
to,
from having to wanting to and
yeah,
enjoying.
to
Yeah.
going like, and it took me decades, like, to sort of say, get Gordon Lightfoot. Because I just grew up thinking Gordon Lightfoot is just like, first of all, he always sounds like he's singing through clenched teeth, and all these like little things that bug me about Gordon Lightfoot. And I did not appreciate him at all. Like now I think he's one of the greatest singer-songwriters that ever lived. He's absolutely one of my favorite singer-songwriters. I've learned his songs.
Uh-huh.
Like I love Gordon Lightfoot, but it wasn't until I was maybe in my 50s, or late 40s, same with Joni Mitchell, same with Neil Young. Neil Young and
Oh,
Bob
wow.
Dylan. Neil Young and Bob Dylan, I didn't like till I was in my 30s.
That's blasphemous.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Wow, that's
I grew up in an era in like sort of the post-punk
of
new wave
course.
era. It was all about dismissing
Yes. Yeah.
what was before, and it's just like music starts now in 1979,
Which I
and then
appreciate
it just took
too.
me a long time to erase that mindset.
Right, 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 right. What? Yeah. Oh man, I have so many. I don't want to go down that avenue, but I have so many questions just about what scenes can do to people and sub scenes and how that all, even just the idea that after Blue Rodeo breaks, everybody's wearing plaid and pretending that
Right.
they're farmers and that kind of thing. The same thing happened again around the 2010s with like, the Lumineers and Mumford and Sons and
Oh my
stuff.
God, yeah,
It was
yeah.
a obviously different sub musically, but same idea of everybody is suddenly dressing like they're, traditional settlers or something.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I remember also like the early 2000s when Arcade Fire got big, and then
yes.
sudden there was like bands that sounded like Arcade Fire and dressed in suits and stuff, and also another one was after Radiohead got big, and there's like so many guys singing in falsetto. It was just,
Yes.
oh, I can't anymore. I just couldn't hear another guy singing in falsetto.
Well, let's talk about that then. I feel like you've listed a few good examples of exactly what I'm talking about, which is this thing of like an original band comes out with a sound, or obviously those aren't original sounds but through the prism of the band, it becomes this original inspirational thing. And then other people start aping it.
Yeah.
You've seen it take place in other genres, and you've seen it take place with Blue Rodeo. What is it like? Was it weird? Did you feel jaded, or were you like, "Oh, this is cool," and then
You
jaded
mean when I saw
the
the
change after Blue Rodeo,
the change
or
after
if you
Blue Rodeo?
compare the
Well,
Arcade
like,
Fire one or whatever?
well, I guess, for me, no, I didn't feel jaded about the Blue Rodeo thing. I guess I felt more like, see, this is an interesting thing too. Like because of the type of music I liked at the time, um, which was definitely more, say, rhythmically exploratory than roots music.
Hmm.
Like, one thing about like what, playing drums in Blue Rodeo, um, like we probably have maybe 50% of our repertoire has the same groove,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
and
Yeah.
uh, and and you know for a long time, I was always like, oh, we got to try and find an alternative to this or something. But then after a while, you just accept it. Okay, this is actually the best rhythm for this song,
Yeah.
and and yes, you've played it hundreds of times before, but that's not what it's about. It's about the melody, the story of the
Yeah.
song,
Serving the song as a whole.
and yeah, serving the song and not worrying. And so it took me a long time to adapt to this. Like, I don't have to be innovative, but
Mm.
although I kind of like, I miss being innovative.
Yeah.
I want people to go like, listen to those crazy drums, and that like, that's not going to happen very often in Blue Rodeo. But what Rodeo taught me to appreciate is how those songs, often those sort of, songs that may be very simple, maybe they're not groundbreaking in any way, but they touch people so deeply and they
Hmm.
become part of their lives.
Hmm.
This is like where you're playing for them and it's like hits them on a cellular level. And that is heavier and more meaningful and profound than like, you know, coming up with a groovy song that has like a crazy beat that, nobody hasn't heard before, which is also a great thing,
Right.
you know, or if it's just, or a song that, it's like, you guys are so cool, you're really unique and fresh. And it's like, it's great to be that. But there's something about, like, I just feel really lucky to be in a band that
Hmm.
touches people that deeply. And that is not a path I would have necessarily, like, that's a path I stumbled onto. And I'm really lucky I stumbled onto that path, because if I chose my own path, I probably maybe would have gone in another direction.
It,
And yeah, there
it
wouldn't have
would have
been,
been more the direction of innovation over touching the general person and
yeah,
that kind of thing. Is that what you're sort of saying?
yeah, I just wanted to be cool.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, my priority was like, be really cool, be
Right.
in the coolest band. And then, and
Unfortunately,
every
that's
band
really
is the coolest.
seductive.
What's that?
Unfortunately, that's really seductive, though, especially because cool does have a currency in a scene. You
Yeah.
know, it
Especially
does.
when you're younger, and as you
Yes,
get
yes.
older, like as you get older, like the goal of coolness becomes more and more hopeless, and then
Oh, of course, yeah.
then you just sort of go like, okay, I guess I'll just settle for meaningful. Uh,
Yeah.
and so but yeah, that's one of the great lessons of being in this band.
Mm,
It, uh, because a lot of people will sort of you might not sort of take the band as seriously, or take that kind of music seriously, because it's not sort of groundbreaking or whatever. But it is, yeah, it's like it's a privilege to play music that means that much to people. Yeah,
absolutely. That's a really
yeah.
good attitude to have, I think, and can maybe lead us into my first sort of official question,
All
which
right.
is what is your best or favorite gig that you've played?
Like
Doesn't need
they
to be Blue Rodeo, it can be.
right.
And by favorite, it's an open interpretation. It can be you nailed the drums that night. It can be the vibe was correct.
Right. I'd say the first one that always comes to mind was a show we did at Massey Hall with the
Hmm.
Sadies.
Wow.
And we always, it's sort of in our, I don't know, I always think of it as the night of the three Gords, because that night Gordon Lightfoot was there, uh, Gordon Pinson was there,
Hmm.
and Gord Downey was there,
Hmm.
and they were actually all there as guests of the Sadies. They were all there. And of course Dallas Good was still alive then.
Hmm.
And it was after the Hip had, this was oh, I can't remember the year. I guess maybe 2018. It was after the Hip had wrapped their last tour, and
Okay.
and so Gord had been diagnosed with terminal brain cancer, and we knew his time was limited, and he
Hmm.
was feeling the effects of the disease. And but it was thrilling that they were there, and we had a good set. I don't remember, like, I don't like the night itself. It wasn't like I had a flawless night on the drums. I remember Greg getting mad at me because he thought I started rose-colored glasses too slow or something. And I forget what, but that was like par for the course. So it was just like
Sure.
another, we played Massey Hall a lot, so I shouldn't just say it was just another night at
No, no,
Massey.
I get it.
Yeah, but it was like, yeah, well, but it was a good show. And then for the encore, as we always do, we did Lost Together, and then we always bring out the openers to join us. So the Sadies came on stage, and Travis Good like was standing with Gord Downey, and he said
Yeah.
like, come out, come and sing, and Gord was like, no, 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 because I don't think I can do it. And Travis was like, just come out. And so they brought him out, and like the crowd just went,
Uh,
like Jim went, oh, Gord Dowdy. And the crowd just went bananas. Like it was really exciting, and like, Gordon Lightfoot is side stage, Gordon Pinson is side stage.
hmm.
All of them gone now, right? All three Gords gone now, and Dallas Good gone.
Yeah,
And
wow.
so this is a cherished memory for that too.
Wow.
And then we launched into, by the way, this is on YouTube. My wife took a video of it that's on YouTube.
Okay, if I remember, I'll put the link in
Yeah,
I'll find it and put the link in the description for people.
yeah, it's really sweet video. And so it came out and we started Lost together. And Gord was kind of like hanging back because I think even just singing the chorus was kind of hard for him to wrap his head around.
Hmm.
But then there's a piano breakdown in the middle of it. And during the piano breakdown, he decided to do a little vocal improv. And as far as I know, that may have been his last performance that he did on stage.
Wow.
Just did this like lovely sort of vocal improv over the piano, and then the song resumed. And it's just like a great version of the song.
Wow.
Like the feeling of community that was in the room and support and love, was incredible.
Wow. Do you think that I'm just thinking about Gord Downey's mindset at the time and just in terms of choosing when to participate. Like you were saying,
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's a really interesting and smart choice of him to make where he goes, okay, this is more of an open canvas, so I can
Yeah.
do improvisation because the thing I'm worried about is maybe remembering the lines for
Yeah.
what I would have joined in
Right.
on. So I think
Yeah.
that's just such a genius and beautiful way of taking advantage of that moment and still participating.
It felt beautiful and generous.
Yes.
It felt like, okay, here I am. I'm severely limited in what I can give these people. I've been
Yeah.
brought up here, but I want to give them something. And so he did. It was just like an amazing moment.
Yeah, you seem really, really moved remembering that. And it's moving.
Yeah.
I'm curious about what playing with those guys was like. Like and I don't mean Blue Rodeo in this moment. I just mean I'm assuming you cross paths at least a few times with, for example, uh, the guys in the Sadies and uh, the Tragically Hip. So do you have any other memories, maybe not from that night, but just what was being a band around those bands like, you
Oh, it
know?
was, well, we have done many, many shows with the Sadies and toured with
Hmm.
these, and that was just always like sheer pleasure. I've probably seen them more than any other band just because, if they're opening for us, like
Never miss it.
yeah, I never didn't go out to watch at least a few songs,
Yeah.
because they were just always great, and I love them. And they were also amazing to hang with, Travis and Dallas, and they're just, we would hang in the back of a tour bus with guitars and
Yeah.
jam, like those guys would just jam and sing songs
Would it be
and
covers? Would it be their songs?
yeah,
Would it be
covers.
Yeah, okay, okay,
They're
cool.
just like country songs and stuff like that. Like Basil knows 1,000 country
Right.
songs. Greg knows, a bunch of songs, and Travis and Dallas, Travis knows hundreds
Yeah.
and hundreds of songs, and Travis, they're both great raconteurs
Yeah.
and musicians. So they were, and as were the rhythm section, Sean Dean and Mike Belisky, lovely guys. So we've had a long association with them and loved them a lot. The hip, we cross paths with less just because, we wouldn't necessarily share bills that often.
Right, right.
I think I recall just playing with them twice, but I did sort of meet them a bunch of times. I met Gord a bunch of times over the years. He was a really nice, supportive guy. Like I remember he came. I used to have my own band called the Swallows, and he came to my first album release at the Reverb in Toronto. He showed up for that, and
Wow.
which I was really honored that he showed up for that.
And
He was
he
really,
just it was just you didn't sort of was it
I think
like
I'd given
yeah.
him a cassette of the first record, and he liked it, and so he came to check it out. He was always really supportive and interested in what indie bands in Toronto or anywhere were doing. He was always supportive of indie bands.
That's how it seems, and just
Yeah,
supportive of bringing up other people, I guess, is the simplest way I could
yeah,
say it.
totally.
Um, Especially in Canadian culture and all of the things that means, let's say.
Mhm.
Um, but I want to hear. Tell me a little bit about the Swallows. Was that a project that gave you a little bit more of an opportunity to play around with the drums in a different way than like you're saying about Blue Rodeo, for
To
example?
a certain degree. Can we possibly take a break for 1 minute?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no worries.
I'd like to go to the water.
Oh yeah,
And
no,
come
dude,
back
no
to tell you
worries.
about the swallows. Okay,
Absolutely, all
that's
good.
awesome. All right, thanks, Alex. I'll
I'll
look
get a coffee myself.
Hi, Alex. Thanks.
Hey, yeah, no worries.
Okay.
I thought it was a funny reveal. You got up off the couch and behind you were two pillows that spelled doom.
Yeah, it's actually well, it's one pillow. Yeah, and it says Doom, but it actually also says Do Om. But I just
Oh.
liked it because I liked it because I was like, oh, it's cool. It spells doom. But then I realized, oh, it also says Do
It's
Om.
actually a meditation thing, I guess, right? Or you could say it's if you put it in a mirror, it's mood, right?
It's
Wouldn't it be
yeah,
mood?
yeah. It could be mood as well.
Yeah.
It's
But yeah,
it's
let's
look at
let's
it
talk
as a
about
go ahead. Sorry.
sorry, go ahead, man. Sorry, that go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, it's you can meditate on your mortality with that pillow. Um,
Well, yeah, exactly. Tell me about the Swallows.
yeah, the Swallows was like I did play drums in the Swallows on a lot of the recordings, but it was a band that I actually sang and played guitar and wrote
Mm,
the songs for.
hmm
And yeah, I've been writing songs since I was 16 and wrote a lot of bad songs. I actually released a cassette, an independent cassette, I think in 1986 that got like terrible reviews. I sent
Oh,
it.
oh no.
Yeah, it was all again, it was some more humbling experiences.
Terrible reviews
Uh,
from what? Local
yeah, just like yeah,
magazines and stuff?
university, like because I sent it out to university stations and stuff like that,
Oh.
and university papers, but to be fair, it wasn't very good. Um, but so that kind of put my tail between my legs. But I kept writing songs because I enjoyed writing songs, and maybe 10 years later, I decided I was actually my brother, who is I have a twin brother named John.
hmm
My brother's actually a really good songwriter. He had a band called Starve and Hungry, kind of a garage
Oh
punk
yeah.
blues, and uh,
Yeah.
that was around the late 90s, early 2000s. And I think I finally wrote a song he said he thought was good. And and then I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll write some more songs. And then I had a whack of songs, and then I decided to record them. And then I thought, well, okay, I got a record. Now I should
hmm
put a band together. So I put a band together, and that band lasted for about 10 years, and made I made four recordings.
hmm
Some of which is with the band, some of which is me playing everything, just because I like doing that
Yeah.
for better or worse. Um, and yeah, and then around 2011, when I released the last one, my youngest son was born, and I just didn't, I have four kids,
Yeah.
and I just didn't have time,
Yeah.
and it wasn't profitable enough to sort of go like, I gotta keep this going.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so it was like, so I sort of put it on ice, and
So if you're writing songs starting at 16, and also falling in love with drums, is the reason that you, let's say, pursued drums more strongly, because you got better immediate feedback? Is it something as simple as that? Or did you
drums
just love it
came.
more?
I mean, I started writing songs when I was 16 because my brother bought a guitar and we had a
hmm
guitar in the house. And then, the first thing I started doing was like making up crappy songs on the guitar and learned some chords. But drumming, I was drawn to from the age of 8.
Ah,
Like that was just something that struck a chord with me and that I felt an affinity for right away, and that I felt sort of really confident about. Uh, so it was a different, like
yeah.
I still feel much, much more confident about drumming than singing or songwriting or guitar playing or anything like that. Like I still feel pretty insecure about those things. But drumming, I mean, I feel insecure about drumming
Sure.
well, like, I have a lot of self-doubt. I think most people do, or,
Yeah.
desire to get better.
Yeah.
Um, but I also have a certain drumming is a thing that sometimes when I'm doing it, I can just feel like, oh, I've got this. I've been doing it
Yes.
for 50 years.
Yeah.
I don't know. Why do I ever worry about what I'm doing? And then I'll make a mistake and go, oh, that's why.
Yeah.
Should have warmed up more, you know.
Uh-huh. Huh. So I see. So you relate to them differently, even though they're both, yeah, instruments and music, just one
I've
feels
just put
almost intrinsic.
I've just put thousands of more hours
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
them.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for indulging those the side questions. Here, the second official question is it's the opposite of the first one. What's the worst gig memory?
Worst gig memory, also the first one that pops into my head, and I think maybe the whole band would agree on this, is another rodeo gig.
Mm-hmm.
This was our first and only gig at Maple Leaf Gardens, and which is for me a teenage dream come true to play Maple Leaf Gardens. I mean, Maple
Yeah.
Leaf Gardens was like the rock and roll. I mean, now it's a Loblaws, but when I was growing up, it was like the rock and roll cathedral.
Yeah.
Uh, it's just where all the greatest rock bands in the world played. Elvis played there, the Rolling Stones played there.
Mm-hmm.
That's- the Beatles played there. Um, uh, and but so we did that gig 1995, and I think it was the Nowhere to Hear tour.
Mm-hmm.
And that tour, we decided to dispense with set lists, and we just call out the tunes as Jim and Greg would just call out the tunes as they
That's
felt.
awesome.
And the band was also smoking a lot of weed in those days, except for Jim. Jim was never a weed smoker, so the rest of the band would just sort of be like really high
Yeah.
and and we it being the first time we played Maple Leaf Gardens, we didn't really have grasp what was necessary in terms of production. So I think
Oh.
the budget was maybe a little under what it should have been. And so
Oh.
the PA and lights were a little underwhelming. And we had Great Big Sea opening for us,
Yeah.
who, at that time already had their finely honed good time set, together. And so they went up there and got the crowd going. And also, what happened was that our road manager, who was also Greg's guitar tech, we didn't know this at the time, but he had a cocaine problem, and
Oh.
he pulled up in the Royal York Hotel with a pile of cocaine and got too paranoid to leave. So
Okay.
we didn't have a road manager or a guitar tech for Greg.
Wow.
I had to find someone last minute, and Greg's pedal board wasn't working, and we were spending like a minute and a half between songs trying to figure out what to
Oh
play,
God.
and everything was too fast because we were nervous, and it was
And
just like,
high.
and then we got a terrible review in the Toronto Star or the Globe or something next day,
Oh.
and our sound guy, Rich, handed in his resignation. He was so ashamed, and
Oh my God.
it was a
Did you
disaster.
accept the resignation or were you like, get the hell out of here?
No,
Come on, man.
no, he's still our sound guy. He's the best sound engineer in the world. Like, he's the best. Rich is the best.
Was
Uh,
that relatively common behavior at that time from him and you just loved working with him? Or was it
oh
that that's was
no, it
somewhat
wasn't
of
the
a
first.
one-off?
I mean, it wasn't the only time he submitted his resignation, I don't think, but I wouldn't say it's a regular thing. I think it's only happened a couple of times. He's been with us
Okay.
for like he's close to 30 years. If he isn't already 30 years, he's been with
Wow.
us a long ass time.
Wow. Also, that just makes me wonder what stories that hotel holds in its walls. You know what I mean?
I think
Yeah.
it was the Royal York.
Wow.
Let's just say it was the Royal York because it goes better with the cocaine.
Yes, exactly.
I'm
Do you
looking
mind if
at
I ask, not about cocaine, but especially it's legal now, but weed? You said you were all fairly big weed smokers at the time. Like, why was that kind of the choice?
well, that happened because when I joined the band, they had just kind of gone through a heavy drinking phase. And when I joined the
Oh,
band, Basil was drinking a lot, and he was drinking a lot to the point where, um, about a year into the band, he had to quit drinking. Like
okay,
it was,
got it.
like it was either,
Quit the
quit
band
drinking.
or quit drinking, basically.
Well, I don't even know, like that, in those days, the band had a very high tolerance for dysfunction. It kind
Uh,
of just, I don't know, because it just seemed to come with the territory. So nobody ever talked about letting Basil go, even though, like, yeah, he was having a really hard time when I joined for the
hmm,
first year. But then he, just of his own volition, quit drinking. But then, so then that it's the tendencies switch from booze to weed,
yeah.
and and there was just a lot of weed around, and so really for the 5 days in July, that record, and Nowhere to Hear, it was
Hmm,
like a very heavy pot smoking records at the time. Again, except for Jim,
right.
who just like had to put up with it and did not love it.
I'm assuming he didn't. Yeah, that's fair, but I
It's
assume
just
it
not
was
his thing.
probably a better trade than heavy drinking.
Mhm.
You know, it's a lot, it's not helpful and it makes people okay with being bored, but it's not going to kill you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he was and I think at first he was like, "Oh, well, this is good. It's better than yeah, everybody
Yeah.
being completely plastered and utterly unreliable."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's soon tired of it because it was a
Yeah.
lot of waiting around. He's like when you're recording and stuff like that, he
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
he's not a man that likes to waste time.
Fair
And
enough.
and there's a lot of time wasting. There's
Uh,
a level of time wasting was introduced.
yeah. Okay. Well, that's anyway, thank you for the answer for worst gig. That certainly sounds like a that's a good answer. So I
Yeah.
guess we're getting into the meat of it, which is what do you think is the band's best song? And you can be diplomatic like we talked about.
Okay, well, yeah, because I did say in our discussion before this that I was reluctant to say this is the best song, this is the worst song because like I don't want to. It's like
No,
Greg
of
has the
course.
best song, Jim has the worst song or something. Um, but so I would have to pick one for each.
Sure.
And so I mean I would and obviously it's a personal taste thing, but um best songs. I think Greg's masterpieces hasn't hit me yet.
Hmm.
Um, some might argue Lost Together,
Yeah.
but I just think which is an amazing song. But I guess I lean towards hasn't hit me yet because I just think the craft in that song, like what sets that song apart, besides like the poignancy of the lyrics and like the imagery is when he hits, I guess it's the bridge. I don't even it's in the last chorus of the song when he goes
Hmm.
out in the middle of Lake Ontario and suddenly the song shifts and goes to this other place, like
Hmm.
in the middle of the chorus, of the last chorus, which is not where you expect
No,
like
a
a
change.
yeah.
No.
And he's done that. He did that before with rose-colored glasses, where kind of at the end of the song it goes into this other place, and it's
Hmm.
it's a really great device that he put in his songs. And it's, I mean, Greg is not a trained songwriter. He's not a trained musician. He's purely instinctive songwriter and musician who's everything he's learned by ear.
Yeah.
So I don't know where he got that idea
Hmm.
to do that, but it's really effective. And so that when that hits that thing, we're out in the middle of Lake Ontario, the same snow is falling.
Hmm.
Um, was it On the Great Dark Wonder or whatever? But it's just such a beautiful image and it
Yes.
interwaves
Yes.
of my heart. Like it's and musically how it shifts, and it's just like so grand and
Hmm.
uplifting, And so I think that was like probably to me that's his sort of yeah masterpiece. And he's interesting because it's like because he's not like Jim is more of a craftsman. Jim, you know, learned piano, knows music theory. Uh, you know, uh, he when he thinks about songwriting, he has very definite ideas in
You're
terms
right.
of, say setting a mood lyrically,
Yeah.
describing a place and a time, and he has very definite ideas about how to go about constructing songs. Whereas Greg is just like he puts the antenna out and whatever comes in and goes out, that's what it is,
Yeah.
So, he just stumbles on brilliant things sometimes,
Yeah, that's cool. They represent the two schools, I would say, of
Hmm.
songwriting. One is sort of instinct led, and the other is sort of more puzzle piecey, you
Yeah,
know.
or puzzle PC, or like I say,
Or yeah,
craftsman.
yeah, yeah.
I get because Jim is a craftsman, and my favorite Jim song,
Hmm.
you know, it's hard to pick a best Jim song because I mean, both 5 Days and Bad Timing to me are amazing songs, just in
Yeah,
terms of just how beautiful they are.
yeah.
And I've seen people hold each other and weep all the way
Mm,
through the songs, because they have that kind of effect on people.
yeah.
But my personal favorite would probably have to be Bulletproof, which I just think it's a song we rarely play, but I just think it's so beautifully written, like the chords, the melody, the lyrics, the vulnerability in the lyrics.
Hmm.
Like I feel like it could have been written by one of the great songwriters of the 60s or something,
Wow. Yeah.
and um so those
Yeah.
I think those two as I won't say they're the best
No,
because,
no, no, no.
but they're my
Favorite.
two favorite.
Sure. No, that's a better way of describing it. Okay, then we're at the very end, the negatives. What do you think? What do you think are the, let's say your least favorite, I guess, of the two? You can list two again.
Well, I actually am only going to list one because
Okay.
I was going to think of two, and like it's actually hard to think of like what's the worst Jim song because his songs, even his worst songs are kind of like at a certain level of
Satisfying.
craftsmanship that, yeah,
Yeah.
you sort of go like, okay, well, that's still got something,
All right.
Um, whereas like Greg is a couple that I would say like, oh, those are clunkers. But
And
even
is he
though,
self-aware enough that he will refer to them as those
no,
as well?
I think he thinks maybe yeah, in hindsight he will.
Right, right.
At the time they're all his children, and
Sure.
he is like, we're gonna we're gonna dress this little toddler up as nicely as we can, put it out there and see if it can walk.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and so that's what you do. But I'm gonna say I actually sort of thought, no, their worst song is a song that they wrote together.
Oh,
And
wow, perfect.
and it's probably the only song on the entire discography that they actually did write together, and that's Five Will Get You Six. Or
Really?
as Greg calls it, Five Will Get You Sucks. And it's on the first album. I think it might be like, I don't know, the second or third song on the first album, but it's like the first line is pointed two tones, uh, echo down the street, the street, the street, the street, the street. Whoa. Like that's like it's terrible, right? But they're just trying to be like they were trying to write a cool new wave
Yeah,
song
yeah.
of 1980 or whenever it's written. And so it's yeah, so they did that together.
That's
So
hilarious. I feel like I was just, my follow-up to that was gonna be, so why don't they, you said it's sort of rare that they write together anyway. Is
yeah,
that
they don't.
essentially an answer? Is that why? Because the material they've created
No,
they
I
just don't
think
think is good?
no, I think actually I'm sure they did collaborations that were really good. But I think they've always kind of written separately.
Right.
Um,
They go to their
you know,
corner and then they bring skeletons of songs and you work on
yeah,
them. Yeah.
yeah. But they decided early on, maybe as early as the Hi-Fi's I'm not sure, but which was the band before,
Yeah.
or one of their bands before Blue Rodeo. But they decided early on to credit all the songs as Keeler Cuddy, and
Hmm.
so and I think yeah. So people think that they
Yeah.
write to that
The
they
Lennon
kind of,
McCartney route, at least on,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Though I think Lennon McCartney actually maybe would have had a bit more input on each other's songs,
No,
and
no,
so
they did. All I'm saying is
yeah,
the name
right.
thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they were copying their heroes, Lennon and
Right,
McCartney.
right. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think that probably brings us to the end. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything you want to say or anything you want to specifically promote? Maybe the documentary, I guess, but uh,
Well, the documentary, yeah, the Blue Rodeo documentary, Lost Together.
yep.
I saw it for the first time on Saturday at the Toronto premiere, and I really enjoyed it. It is, as Greg called it, it's the PG version.
Which happens a lot, I think,
Yeah.
with
Which yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know if the public would be ready for the R-rated version,
yeah.
but but it's it's a 90-minute doc, so telling a story that actually begins when Jim and Greg met when they're 15. So that was like 55 years ago almost.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so to condense that into 90 minutes is
Yes.
obviously daunting. I think the director Dale Heslip did an amazing job doing it. You know, he
Mm-hmm.
had to pick certain storylines and stick to that. And but they're good storylines. You know, so I mean, there's a lot of the story that isn't told. There's a lot of people
Right.
that are crucial people, former band members, James Gray, Bob Packwood, Kim Deschamps. Um, and Mark French are all former band members that actually their names aren't even mentioned in it. But
Oh, wow.
yeah, but there's just too much.
Limited time to cover a very
Yeah,
broad
yeah,
amount. Yeah, I get
yeah.
it. I get it.
So and I'm not saying that as a diss. I'm just
No, no,
saying
no, no.
kind of an unfortunate reality of having such a short time. But
Yeah.
having said that, I loved it. I thought Dale did an amazing job. It's really touching, and it's a really nice thing to have in our 40th year. My 33rd year with the band, but the band's 40th year. So
Yeah.
I recommend watching it. It's going to be on CBC Gem and the CBC Documentary Channel, and I think that's also going to be broadcast on the actual CBC.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I want to follow up a little bit, actually, if you don't mind, about. I don't want to know the non-PG stuff. All I want to know from you is that weird to see, like a cleaned up version when you know. I'm not saying anything crazy seedy happened or whatever, but just the idea that you go, oh, well, this is more like something our kids could watch and we'd feel okay with it when we know the full thing. Like, would you rather the full thing be up there, warts and all, or are you happy with
Well,
this?
not necessarily.
Yeah.
Because it's not flattering to most of us. But I mean, also, there is enough honesty in it
Yeah.
that because there is enough realness and honesty in it that I did not feel that. I didn't
Okay.
feel like, I mean, Greg was kind of joking when he says the PG version, but there's there's enough realness in it
Yeah.
that like I enjoyed it for that. Like they don't shy away, some of the storylines are like Bobby Wiseman leaving the band,
Hmm.
Jim's marital crisis when they were on the road too much
Right.
in the early 90s, Greg almost quitting the band in 2016. So there's conflicts between Jim and Greg.
No,
So
absolutely.
it actually mostly focuses on some of the difficult times the band had.
Right.
Um,
Just not salacious, which is nice.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
silly. And ultimately it sort of ends on a note like, aren't they wonderful? Which is also nice.
Yeah. No, I should. No, okay. Anyway, good. I'm glad that you feel that way. I was just curious to see what some your perspective is as somebody who's sort of watching a version of a large chunk of your life play
Yeah.
out, or
Mhm.
be reflected back to you with anything that's edited is you could read into that as commentary, right? So it's
Yeah.
interesting. It's interesting. That's all I mean, really. But yeah, thank you so much.
Ultimately, yeah, you're welcome. I mean, I was going to say ultimately it's it in the long time I've been in the band and any band that's been around that long, there's a lot of struggle uh
Yeah.
along with that goes into a band enduring like that. But ultimately, it's this really positive gift.
Hmm.
And that is the thing that's emphasized in the movie, and that is kind of in the end the most important thing.
Definitely. The positives you got from the experience of being in a band, is that really what you mean?
Yeah, and and in particular this band.
This band,
Like
yeah, yeah.
it really is a like a great blessing, you know. And
Good.
so that's kind of what the movie's about. So that's good.
Good. It is good. All right. We can end it there. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming on.
Acts just like a